Previously on World History and Geography.
After centuries of nearly constant fighting, the defeat of Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo motivated European superpowers to create a lasting peace with the Congress of Vienna. By the turn of the 20th century, the nations of Europe had mostly been at peace with one another for decades. But this was no accident. Efforts to outlaw war and achieve a permanent peace had been gaining momentum in Europe since the middle of the 19th century. By 1900, hundreds of peace organizations were active. In addition, peace congresses convened regularly between 1843 and 1907. Some Europeans believed that progress had made war a thing of the past.
And now, our feature presentation.
Tell me everything you know about World War I.
Okay, here goes. While peace and harmony characterized much of Europe at the beginning of the 1900s, there were less visible and darker forces at work. Below the surface of peace and goodwill, Europe witnessed several gradual developments that would ultimately help propel the continent into war. One such development was the growth of nationalism, or a deep devotion to one's nation. Nationalism can serve as a unifying force within a country. However, it can also cause intense competition among nations, with each seeking to overpower the other. By the turn of the 20th century, a fierce rivalry had developed among Europe's great powers. Those nations were Germany, Austria-Hungary, Great Britain, Russia, Italy, and France. This increasing rivalry among European nations stemmed from several sources. Competitions for M&Ms, that's materials and markets, was a major one. Territorial disputes were another. France, for example, had never gotten over the loss of Alsace-Lorraine to Germany in the Franco-Prussian War. Austria-Hungary and Russia both tried to dominate the Balkan Peninsula, a region in southeastern Europe. Within the Balkans, the intense nationalism of Serbs, Bulgarians, Romanians, and other ethnic groups led to demands for independence. Another force that helped set the stage for war in Europe was imperialism. The nations of Europe competed fiercely for colonies in Africa and Asia. The quest for colonies sometimes pushed European nations to the brink of war. As European countries continued to compete for overseas empires, their sense of rivalry and mistrust of one another deepened. Yet another troubling development throughout the early years of the 20th century was the rise of a dangerous European arms race. The nations of Europe believed that to be truly great, they needed to have a powerful military, and began to spend loads of money on defense. By 1914, all the great powers except Britain had large standing armies. Britain dominated the seas with their massive navy. In addition, military experts stressed the importance of being able to quickly mobilize or organize and move troops in case of a war. Generals in each country developed highly detailed plans for such a mobilization to war. The policy of glorifying military power and keeping an army prepared for war was known as militarism. Having a large and strong standing army made citizens feel patriotic. However, it also frightened some. Rivalries and mutual mistrust had led to the creation of several military alliances among the great powers as early as the 1870s. This alliance system had been designed to keep peace in Europe, but it would instead help push the continent to war. Between 1864 and 1871, Prussia's blood and iron chancellor, Otto von Bismarck, freely used war to unify Germany, or Deutschland.
Deutschland means Germany.
Yay!
After 1871, however, Bismarck declared Germany to be a satisfied power. He then turned his energies to maintaining peace in Europe. Bismarck saw France as the greatest threat to peace. Bismarck believed that France still wanted revenge for its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War. Bismarck's first goal, therefore, was to isolate France. As long as it is without allies, Bismarck stressed, France poses no danger to us. In 1879, Bismarck formed the dual alliance between Germany and Austria-Hungary. 3 years later, Italy joined the two countries, forming the Triple Alliance. In 1881, Bismarck took yet another possible ally away from France by making a treaty with Russia. In 1890, Germany's foreign policy changed dramatically. That year, Kaiser Wilhelm II, who 2 years earlier had become ruler of Germany, forced Bismarck to resign. A proud and stubborn man, Wilhelm II did not wish to share power with anyone. Besides wanting to assert his own power, the new Kaiser was eager to show the world just how mighty Germany had become. Hey, did you know that the title Kaiser comes from the title Caesar, the title for the emperor of the Roman Empire?
Hail Caesar!
It was named after Julius Caesar. Now you know. Kaiser Wilhelm let his nation's treaty with Russia lapse in 1890. Russia responded by forming a defensive military alliance with France in 1892 and 1894. Such an alliance had been Bismarck's fear. War with either Russia or France would make Germany the enemy of both. Germany would then be forced to fight a two-front war, a war on both its eastern and western borders, which Germany didn't want to do. Wilhelm began a tremendous shipbuilding program in an effort to make the German Navy equal to that of the mighty British fleet. Alarmed, Great Britain formed the Entente Cordiale with France. Entente is French for alliance. In 1907, Britain made another entente, this time with both France and Russia.
Russia, Great Britain, and France had formed an Entente Cordiale. Oh.
The Triple Entente, as it was called, did not bind Britain to fight with France and Russia. However, it did almost certainly ensure that Britain would not fight against them. In 1907, two rival camps existed in Europe. On one side was the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. On the other side was the Triple Entente, Great Britain, France, and Russia. A dispute between two rival powers could draw all the nations of Europe into war. Nowhere was that dispute more likely to occur than on the Balkan Peninsula. This mountainous peninsula in the southeastern corner of Europe was home to an assortment of ethnic groups. With a long history of nationalist uprisings and ethnic clashes, the Balkans was known as the powder keg of Europe because of its potential for exploding. I think it was meant as a metaphor. The Ottoman Empire, which included the Balkan region, was in rapid decline. While some Balkan groups struggled to free themselves from the Ottoman Turks, others had already broken away from their Turkish rulers. These peoples had formed new nations, including Bulgaria, Greece, Montenegro, Romania, and Serbia. Nationalism was a powerful force in these countries. Each group longed to extend its borders. Serbia, for example, had a large Slavic population. It hoped to absorb all of the Slavs on the Balkan Peninsula. Russia, itself a mostly Slavic nation, supported Serbian nationalism. However, Serbia's powerful northern neighbor, Austria-Hungary, opposed such an effort. Austria feared the efforts to create a Slavic state would stir rebellion among its Slavic population. In 1908, Austria annexed, or took over, Bosnia and Herzegovina. These were two Balkan areas with large Slavic populations. Serbian leaders who had sought to rule these provinces were outraged. In the years that followed, tensions between Serbia and Austria steadily rose. The Serbs continually vowed to take Bosnia and Herzegovina away from Austria. In response, Austria-Hungary vowed to crush any Serbian effort to undermine its authority in the Balkans. Into this poisoned atmosphere of mutual dislike and mistrust stepped the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Franz Ferdinand. No, not the band Franz Ferdinand, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He was the nephew of the Emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Franz Joseph, and was next in line for the throne. Anyway, on June 28, 1914, Ferdinand and his wife paid a state visit to Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. It would be their last. The royal pair was shot at point-blank range as they rode through the streets of Sarajevo in an open car. Earlier in the day, the couple had had a bomb or grenade thrown at them as they passed, but had survived the attack. Obviously, after having a bomb thrown at them, they had decided to leave Sarajevo. But when the car stopped in front of a delicatessen because of a navigation mix-up with the driver, this was in the days before GPS. A man eating a sandwich at the delicatessen walked out to the car and shot and killed Ferdinand and his wife. The killer and sandwich eater was Gavril Princip, and this was the sandwich he was eating. Anyway, Gavril Princip was a 19-year-old Serbian and member of the Black Hand. The Black Hand was a secret society committed to ridding Bosnia of Austrian rule. Because the assassin and his co-conspirators were Serbian, Austria decided to use the murders as an excuse to punish Serbia. On July 23rd, Austria presented Serbia with an ultimatum containing numerous demands. Serbia knew that refusing the ultimatum would lead to war against the more powerful Austria. Therefore, Serbian leaders agreed to most of Austria's demands. They offered to have several others settled by an international conference. Austria, however, was in no mood to negotiate. The nation's leaders, it seemed, had already settled on war. On July 28, 1914, Austria rejected Serbia's offer and declared war. That same day, Russia, an ally of Serbia with its largely Slavic population, took action. Russian leaders ordered the mobilization of troops toward the Austrian border. Leaders all over Europe suddenly took notice. The fragile European stability seemed ready to collapse into armed conflict. The British foreign minister, the Italian government, and even Kaiser Wilhelm himself urged Austria and Russia to negotiate. The machinery of war had been set into motion.
An entente cordiale. Oh,